We called him the fat boy in the kitchen. In the high-stress environment of a Montreal brasserie, you don't use names, you use identifiers. Table 4 was the bad tipper. Booth 2 was the gluten-free couple. And booth 9 was the fat boy. He was easily pushing 400 pounds, a towering, wide mountain of a man who always wore a heavy, dark green winter parka. He came into Brasserie Laurier every single night at exactly 7 p.m. He always demanded booth 9. It's a deep, U-shaped leather alcove tucked into the far back corner of the restaurant, shielded from the main floor by a decorative frosted glass partition and a heavy oak coat rack. From the server station, all you could see was the top of his bald head and the massive span of his shoulders. He ordered a feast every night. A bowl of French onion soup, a large plate of steak frites, a side of garlic bread, and 3 pints of local stout. He'd bring a large tablet, prop it up against the salt and pepper shakers, and watch whatever it was he watched. He'd sit there for exactly 3 hours, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., like clockwork. We honestly loved him. He was a server's dream. He never asked for modifications, never complained, and never needed check-ins. You dropped the mountain of food off, he gave a curt nod, and you left him alone. Whenever I glanced over during the dinner rush, I'd see the soft, blue glow of the tablet illuminating his thick face, hear the faint clatter of his cutlery, and know he was content. At 10 p.m. sharp, he'd lumber to the front, pay his enormous tab in cash, leave a 30% tip, and waddle out into the freezing night. Last Tuesday, a brutal late-season snowstorm hit the city. The streets were entirely dead. By 8:30 p.m., the brasserie was completely empty except for him. Since I had no other tables to manage, I decided to be proactive. I grabbed a water pitcher and walked all the way to the back of the restaurant to refill his glass. As I rounded the frosted glass partition, I stopped dead in my tracks. The food was entirely untouched. A pale, opaque layer of congealed fat had already formed over the steak. The booth was empty, but the glow of the screen was still there. I stepped closer, my heart doing a sudden, violent flutter. The tablet wasn't playing a movie. It was playing a video of him. It was a seamless, high-definition recording of the man sitting in this exact booth. The screen showed him chewing, blinking, occasionally looking down at his plate, and wiping his mouth. He had positioned the tablet at the perfect angle so that, from a distance, the screen's glow and the moving image of his face created a flawless optical illusion. Hidden beneath a cloth napkin next to the tablet was a small Bluetooth speaker, softly looping the recorded sound of heavy breathing, chewing, and silverware scraping against porcelain. I stood there, paralyzed by the sheer, terrifying calculation of it. He ordered the massive meals, so we would have no reason to offer him a menu or ask if he needed anything else. He sat in the secluded booth 9 because it was entirely obscured from the rest of the room. And most importantly, booth 9 was located directly next to the emergency fire exit, which opened out into the labyrinth of dark, unlit alleyways behind the avenue. He had been buying himself an alibi for months. If the Montreal police ever came knocking, a half-dozen servers would swear on a stack of Bibles that this massive, immovable man was sitting in our restaurant from 7 to 10 p.m. every single night. My breathing hitched as I stared at the heavy metal of the fire exit door. Then the handle slowly turned. A blast of bitter, freezing air swept over my ankles as the heavy door was pushed open. The fat boy squeezed his massive frame back inside. He wasn't sweating from the ambient heat of the restaurant. He was shivering. His boots were covered in dirty alley snow. He was aggressively wiping something dark and thick off the leather of his heavy winter gloves with an old rag. He froze when he saw me standing there with the water pitcher. He looked at me. Then he looked at the tablet, which was still playing the video of him chewing his food. The silence in the restaurant was deafening, broken only by the tinny sound of recorded silverware clinking from the little speaker on the table. He didn't panic. He didn't rush. He slowly pulled off his stained gloves, reached into his thick parka, and pulled out a crisp $100 bill. He placed it carefully on the table, right next to the untouched cold steak. His eyes met mine. They were completely flat, dead. "I've been sitting right here enjoying my meal for the last 2 hours," he said, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. "Right?" I couldn't speak. I just stared at the dark stains on the rag in his hand. I nodded slowly. "Good," he muttered. He picked up his tablet, turned off the speaker, and lumbered toward the front doors, disappearing into the blizzard. I quit the next morning. I don't watch the local news anymore. I don't want to know what he was doing in the dark for 3 hours every night. I just know that somewhere in this city, there is a man who needs a very solid alibi, and he is perfectly willing